All right, so let's talk a little bit about Oklahoma City. The new documentary, Oklahoma City Bombing and American Terror, or something like that, I think is what it's called, on Netflix. It just released this year, probably on April 19th, I'm betting. I just got around to watching it, however. But I'm guessing it premiered on April 19th. I'm adjusting my camera before I get too far down the road. And again, because I'm driving and I don't know where the sun's going to be at predicting-wise, it's not going to be the greatest video, but it should have pretty decent audio. And this is for the family channel / behind the scenes channel, whatever you want to call it, for people who just want to get to know me personally, because I'm going to relate the Oklahoma City bombing thing to my own personal life. So let me get into this. First, I will say, if you are thinking about watching the Oklahoma City bombing documentary, my recommendation is don't bother. Now, if you watched it and you really liked it, then I feel like a jackass because maybe you really liked it. But I felt that documentary really offered nothing. Back when it happened and after it happened, I was kind of embroiled in the whole thing, and I watched stuff and I studied the stuff, and I was kind of big into conspiracy theory and that kind of stuff like that. And so I was diving into all the crazy coincidences to the date, April 19th, and what other significant events that happened on the April 19th, which, by the way, Waco, Texas happened on April 19th, and that was the biggest thing, of course, that was brought out in the movie. Now, I remember years ago when I looked into this, it was also the same date as the Titanic sinking and several other events. That turns out not to be true, it looks like. Years ago, when I was looking into it, I believed that did happen, that was a significant date in history, and that several major events happened. And in fact, if you look up April 19th, you will find that there are several significant historical events that happened on April 19th. But the Titanic was not one of them. I think that was on the 14th or the 15th, not the 19th. So let's get that clear. And the only reason it mattered is because in my past, when I studied occultism and I was heavy into religions with that, I felt that there was significance to dates. In fact, I still think there's significance to dates, don't get me wrong. But, it happens around, different festivals in paganism, like the Beltane Festival, a fire festival, there was all this talk that, Oklahoma City was a fire ritual from occultists, and Waco also, because the whole compound went up in fire. It was a fire ritual. And so back in the day when I was big into religion, I couldn't dismiss looking into those possibilities. Like, are these conducted events because they coincide with certain important dates? Now, I will say that I moved away from that a bit, again, because, the Titanic, for example, wasn't on the 19th, and that was some incorrect information, and some of the other things that happened on the 19th, not a big coincidence. And while I believe in conspiracies per se, I think that you'd be crazy to not believe that there are conspiracies in the world. It's what we have legal terms for: conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to fraud. And yet somehow, if you tell somebody that's two people or more conspired to deceive the public or pull something off, you're considered a nutbag for being a conspiracy theorist, when in fact our legal system has terminology for conspiracies. So it does happen, and did happen. And so, where I'm going with that, let me give you a small, again, review of the Oklahoma City bombing movie on Netflix documentary, and then some personal stuff about it to end my For the Family section today, or behind the scenes of the Devil's Advocates. And then I will have a subscriber-only video, by the way, that I'm going to do after this, talking about my upcoming live with Birdie Bombshell. And so I'm going to give some stuff just for subscribers to get a sneak peek of that event and what's going on there. But so all the time I'm having to decide what's going to the behind the scenes channel for free, and what's going on just subscriber only area, which is kind of behind a little paywall. Anyways, let's get into Oklahoma. So the documentary, like I said, was pretty non-revelatory. There was nothing new. I learned nothing new. If anything, I could take out of it from an interest sake, if you were interested in the Oklahoma City case, bombing of the Federal Memorial Building, Alfred Memorial Building. was you got to see some faces, but I don't think they were new faces. Like any of the faces that were on there were not new faces. But you got to hear their personal stories, and you got to see some video footage of the day of the shooting, of the bombing from inside the building, and got to know a little bit of the people who were involved. And frankly, it was a little embarrassing in my opinion. I'm going to give you my personal views of it. When they show old men like me, who were in law enforcement at the time, and younger men at the time, acting all tough and telling you how they were pushing McVeigh around, and I told his ass to sit down, and he said, yes, sir. Like, you're so tough. You're so tough. Like, you have McVeigh in handcuffs, surrounded by officers everywhere with guns, and you're going to brag about how you gave him orders and he did what you said. So, what a tough guy you are. It came off a little. It is embarrassing. It felt like old people like me trying to brag about how I was a badass back in the day because I pushed around Timothy McVeigh after he was arrested and in handcuffs. It just felt. That's how I felt about it. It was a little embarrassing. These guys certainly don't look like tough guys today, and I don't think it's real tough of you to push somebody around when they're in handcuffs already, and you're surrounded by all your officers with weapons. But anyways, that's an aside. I went longer on that than I wanted to. Sorry about that. I have a thing against authority trying to act like they're so cool. And there was times in the story, in the documentary, where law enforcement or whatever talks about how they caught McVeigh or whatever, and they just have this huge shitting smile like they're so fucking smart. And I'm just like, you guys look bad. Like, bragging about how cool you are because you caught the bad guy, and how you're not going to tolerate this shit in America. It just looked optically bad, in my opinion. Maybe that's the old conspiracy theory part of me coming out again. It's just, I have a real thing against abuse of power and attitude like you're so fucking cool. Anyways, pardon for the swearings all the time. But I want to end with this thought to just let you know, because, and maybe you've already heard some of this, but Waco, Texas happened on the same day, April 19th, years before, right? And there was talk in the show about whether Timothy McVeigh and Nichols, his partner, and Fortier, which was another partner that turned against the two of them to testify, according to the documentary, that in part they were inspired / whatever to retaliate for Waco, Texas, because they had come to believe that the government was out to take our guns, and Waco, Texas was this huge oversight of the government coming in to take guns from people, and it turned into a disaster, and the entire compound was destroyed, and there was something like 80 people killed, maybe 76 people, 80 people killed in the Waco, Texas fire. And if you don't remember, the reason why it's important to me is because David Koresh, who was the leader of a religious group in this compound, allegedly was from a splinter group of Seventh-day Adventists, and I was born and raised a Seventh-day Adventist. I spent the best part of my life I grew up in church schools, at Seventh-day Adventist schools, and up through the start of high school. I went to church schools, and then I went to public school in high school, and but then I stayed active in the church. I stayed active in the church until somewhere in my early 20s, when I officially left the church and never came back to the church. But I didn't completely lose my religion. I left the church at that point in my early 20s, but then I spent time studying the Bible from a new perspective. And where I'm going with all that is just that when I hear Waco, Texas again, and that reminds me of Seventh-day Adventist and the Branch Davidians and this religious cult and this leader who was a former Adventist who ended up convincing himself and his followers that he was some kind of reincarnate Jesus Christ, and had all the women in the church in his little compound giving up their daughters to him as wives and letting them sleep with their daughters and all these stuff like that. And I think to myself, it's just it brings me back to the religious days. And I will say, not to defend Seventh-day Adventism, but I want to say that the Adventists, of course, tried to separate themselves from David Koresh and the Branch Davidians, as they were called. The Branch Davidians being David Koresh. They called his group the Davidians. So the Adventist Church tried to separate themselves from them. And to be fair, there are a lot of reasons why you can't say David Koresh and anything he believed in that compound is anything remotely close to Seventh-day Adventism. Other than Seventh-day Adventists do have like a bit of this whole doomsday end day prophecy of thinking that the government's going to turn against everybody and round them up and put them in prisons and stuff like that. And that was Koresh had that kind of mentality. The government's out to get us, and we have to take a stand against the government. And so that was some similarity to Seventh-day Adventists. But I guess where I'm going with all that is, it just the whole show kind of, as it kept bringing up David Koresh and the Branch Davidians, brought me back to those days. And there's part of me that loves to talk about my days in Seventh-day Adventism and religion, and I still have a desire to share my story with people, but I feel like I can't share my story without Christians feeling insulted that I'm trying to tear down Christianity. I view everything I do, including whether it's educating people on conspiracy theories or deconstructing Christianity, or now in the new cases where I'm really focused, Luigi Mangione and the United Healthcare situation, or Brian Koberger. In all cases, I have an attitude of basically trying to counter close-mindedness. So when everyone thinks, for example, that the Adventists are just a bunch of nutbags, I feel a desire to kind of defend them. When everybody thinks that Luigi Mangione is a murderer, I feel a desire to kind of defend that logic. It's not so much even defending the person or the organization as it is of, please people, stop being so close-minded that you hear a narrative and that's all you repeat. It's okay at the end of the day if a religion isn't the true religion, and it's okay if at the end of the day somebody did or didn't do a crime. But let's be fair about the story, and let's have an open discussion about it, and let's not use judgmental rhetoric to convict people of things because we just don't like what they stand for, and so we just repeat bullshit. I guess that's my personal rant. So I guess that's enough for now. I don't want to make this a long rant. Just wanted to let you know that my opinion is on the Oklahoma City bombing, an American terror on Netflix. Not worth watching. I wouldn't recommend it. Didn't offer anything to me. And then, again, an opportunity to share my religious background a little bit with you. So thanks for listening. I will probably have this uploaded to the Backstage channel for free shortly. I'm on a drive and I'm out of cell phone service, so I got to finish this drive. And now I'm going to record for also later to post at the same time on my main channel as an unlisted video for subscribers only. A sneak peek into Birdie Bombshell and I's live tomorrow, and what the future looks like for Birdie Bombshell and I. So if you're into the Devil's Advocates channel and not just into my personal family side of the channel, consider subscribing. I'm moving very, very close on YouTube to being able to offer subscription-only content. In the meantime, I'm doing it a different way. But enough of that. Thanks all for the free look into my life. And if you have any comments about Adventism, or about Oklahoma City, or about Waco, I'd love to hear it.